The KTM 390 Adventure X has barely been talked about in the media. All the glory was really stolen by its R-sister. But is that justified? Is it actually the inferior 390 Adventure or not? That's what we're going to look at together in this motovlog. Let's go! Right then, hello and welcome to a new motovlog here from Spain, the 1000 PS away garage, in the months of February, March and April. Over a few weeks here around the Barcelona area, we're catching up on various motorcycle new releases from this year that are already available, as well as new bikes from last year that we ended up skipping because there just wasn't enough time for the tests. We're making up for all of that now here in Spain, and there are loads of motovlogs again as well. I've already been out on the BMW R1300RS, the R1300RT, the R12G/S, the Triumph Scrambler 1200XE, all sorts of mighty machines, but now we're back to the A2 Travel Enduro segment, which is very close to my heart. So that we're all on the same page, here's a very quick technical overview. This is a new generation of 390 Adventures that arrived in 2025. They no longer share a frame with the Duke, but instead have their own steel trellis frame, developed specifically for this adventure use case. The single-cylinder engine, with a capacity of just under 399 cubic centimeters, is still the same as in the 390 Duke, and it's identical in character too. We've got 165 kilograms dry, which means 176 kilograms ready to ride, and in this X version, the components are geared a bit more towards road use and day-to-day riding, most obviously with the steel wheels, 19 inches at the front and 17 inches at the rear, more road-focused, and the handlebar is lower as well. We've got a simpler LC display, and in general, the electronics package is a bit more basic too. I'd say that's enough talking for now. The rest, plus a few technical details and impressions, will come once we get going. And the first thing that always stands out on a 390 Adventure like this is how restrained this engine sounds. So I don't know how well it comes across inside the helmet either, but it's very, let's say, neighbor-friendly. Right, and I've deliberately picked out a particularly small, rather twisty, what do you call it, winding road, because this is exactly where I see the 390 Adventure X. The bike has only got 140 kilometers on the clock at the moment. We basically got it fresh off the production line. So don't be surprised that the shift light here in the simple display starts flashing pretty early. I hope the engine forgives me if I still rev it out a bit more, because this engine wants to be, or has to be, revved out if you want to make brisk progress. Even when cruising, of course, you can just potter along quite relaxed at under 4,000 revolutions per minute. That feels composed enough from the engine as well. No surprises there, the engine is genuinely well proven by now. And of course, if I now say, right, full throttle there. And the revs and the speed only climb slowly. Here as well, for example, 3,500 revolutions per minute, 4,000. Yes, it takes time. It takes time to build momentum. Luckily, the quick shifter actually works really well, even at low revs. That makes it easy to stay in exactly the right gear, which is so important. And on these tight, winding, uphill roads, third gear from 30-35. So I think you get what I mean. The engine has power, but only in the upper half of the rev range up to the top third. Down low, it's rather subdued. But it's also easy to manage and completely unstressed. You just chug along comfortably. I also find the riding position good, not too acute at the knees. The handlebar is lower now. On the R version, I'd say it's definitely 5 centimeters higher. But that also suits the slightly more playful handling of this 390 Adventure X, because the smaller front wheel, and at the same time the wider wheel, obviously helps. We've got more rubber on the road when leaned over. The amount of input needed to tip it into a corner is lower too. It's simply a bit more harmonious on tarmac. The suspension itself isn't adjustable either, unlike the R version. 200 millimeters of travel as well, so 5 centimeters less. But it works. I think they've struck the balance well between stability, so you can throw it through the bends a bit more aggressively and it doesn't start wallowing or anything like that. At the same time, comfort is spot on. But the fact that you'd be able to ride it reasonably well on the road was something we could already have guessed. After all, it's a proven engine, and it's also a manufacturer that I think absolutely knows how to get the basic vehicle set up right. So of course it gets interesting when this X is meant to be the everyday 390 adventure. Can it still offer some fun on looser ground? And that's exactly what we're doing now. The standing riding position takes a bit of getting used to, simply because right now we're just riding up here. Yes, exactly. Especially going uphill, of course, you can really tell the handlebar is actually too low. You could also call it a very active standing position. But for my 1.85 m, I feel a bit hunched over, a bit awkward. Great stretch of road though, isn't it? We've been out and about in Catalonia already, from the sea all the way to the distant Pyrenees, and we've mapped out our favorite roads in this region. How did we do that? Thanks to our channel partners SP Connect and Calamoto, you can ride all of these brilliant roads, routes and tours yourself. Best thing to do is head to the video description, you'll find everything linked there. Out here in off-road use, I think the engine is good for just letting it flow along. But if you suddenly want to break traction quickly, then once again, it's either a case of riding in extremely low gears or just accepting that braking grip doesn't come that easily here. Something else I forgot to mention regarding the electronics, because another gravel section is starting in a moment, and that's when we'll switch pretty much the only system we've got on board here, namely the ABS. But first, just quickly, this is the suspension test section with very coarse concrete. And yes, like I said, they've genuinely found a good balance between soft enough and still stable enough. Right, and now we're here. Yes, the readability of this display, which reminds me of a school calculator, is so-so, especially the left-hand side, which is written very small and isn't that easy to read in the sun, but it does the job. And now here, I was already riding with off-road ABS anyway, right, so I didn't need it, but you can switch the rear ABS off. Traction control is an interesting topic because KTM told us there is traction control, but here in the menu and also just from trying it for ourselves, no, there is no traction control on board here. Not even the warning light, so I'm not sure whether that was simply misinformation. Anyway, the engine is docile enough, so I didn't really miss traction control. But being able to switch off the rear ABS is essential for me, even on a bike that only ventures lightly into loose terrain, so that already works well enough. Yes, as I said, in terms of the suspension and the engine, if you accept that it has no torque down low, it's actually really solid. You just want the handlebar a touch higher for a genuinely decent standing position, but that's quickly sorted. And what's probably set up most for off-road use, I have to say, are the brakes, and they've been made very soft. Bi-Bri single disc at the front, single disc at the rear, 2 pistons in the front caliper, and it's tuned so softly that off-road out here it's naturally very easy, even with less experience, to brake nicely and not overdo it, even though the ABS at the front stays active at all times, but on the road it's very soft. On the road, even with medium braking force, I'm almost pulling the lever right back to my fingers, to my glove, and strong deceleration is really only possible if you use the rear brake firmly as well. So I think they could have given the X a touch more stopping power, and off-road that still wouldn't have been a big drama. The last topic we need to talk about is the wheels and tires. We've got these smaller dimensions, and I think, yes, in reality, because lots of people say they'd like a 21-inch front wheel, I think this actually works. For this kind of gravel action, which is probably pretty much what 90% of riders will ever do with an A2 travel enduro like this, and especially with the 390X, it's enough. Even with 19 inches, even with the shorter suspension, you can tell that someone here knows how to make an off-road motorcycle, and even this 390 Adventure X doesn't feel out of place at all on loose ground. Even if it's not, of course, as purpose-built for it, mainly because of the ergonomics, as is the case with the R version. Right, now let's get off once more and have another look at the thing from the outside. There are also little details that show this really is a kind of hybrid. For example, the ground clearance is quite high at 272 millimeters. There are far more off-road oriented bikes on the market that offer less ground clearance, so I don't think you can deny it its sense of adventure. On top of that, it's a very affordable motorcycle, just under 5,700 euros in Germany and just under 6,400 in Austria. For an A2 travel enduro, that really isn't a lot of money, or rather it's a lot of motorcycle for relatively little money when you consider that you get decent performance in a great many areas: everyday use, touring, country road riding, and also off-road riding. Of course, at this price, you do have to accept certain smaller areas where there's still room for improvement, where you can clearly feel that the very best components haven't been fitted, and you simply have to live with that as is the case, for example, with the brakes or the display. It's really a question of what matters to you, and that's exactly what interests me now. What matters to you? Is the 390 Adventure X ultimately the inferior one of the 390 Adventure sisters, or do you think less is more, with the clearly lower price and what's being offered here, meaning the price-performance ratio actually makes more sense than on the 390 Adventure R, which the marketing has praised so highly? I'm looking forward to your opinions, and that was already my first impression of the 390 Adventure X. Check out the full test video, check out the comparison with the CF Moto 450 MT as well. That'll be interesting too, because they're very close on price. And yes, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the motovlog. And if you did, leave me a thumbs up, and I'm sure we'll see each other again soon. Thanks for watching, take care, and bye. Adios, amigos.